The scent of blood and fear was thick in the air, a metallic tang that coated Arya's tongue. It was her own blood, dripping from the slice on her palm, and her own fear, a wild animal thrashing inside her ribs. Murderer! A voice hissed from the circling crowd. The word was a stone thrown in a silent pool, and the ripples of sound that followed were growls. Hundreds of them. Wolves from 5 packs, their eyes glowing like embers in the twilight of the great arena, their bodies tense with the promise of violence. Arya stood alone before the Judgment Stone, an ancient slab of granite worn smooth by centuries of pack law. Her thin servant's tunic was stained with the blood of an alpha, and that was a sin no one ever walked away from. 2 hours earlier, the only blood on her hands had been from a mishandled kitchen knife while dicing turnips. She had been just another Omega, another ghost in the bustling kitchens of Crescent Hollow, the neutral territory where the quinquennial Alpha Summit was held. For 6 years, she had kept her head down, her scent meek, her presence forgettable. It was the only way to survive. "Hurry with that wine, girl," the head cook had snapped, shoving a heavy flagon into her arms. "Alpha Grayson is meeting with the High Priestess in the Moon Temple. Don't keep them waiting." Arya had scurried through the stone corridors, the cool air a relief from the kitchen's oppressive heat. As she neared the temple, hushed, urgent voices drifted from a shadowed alcove. She knew she should have kept walking. An Omega who heard things she shouldn't was an Omega who got hurt, but the words froze her in her tracks. Eliminating the Silvercrest heir before the succession trials can even begin. A man's voice, smooth as oiled leather, had said, "Vivian has a plan. The poison is ready." Silvercrest heir. The words were a ghost from a past Arya barely remembered. The Silvercrest pack had been wiped out 20 years ago, their alpha queen murdered, their line thought to be extinct. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She had to warn someone, anyone. She saw a pair of guards from the Ironwood pack and rushed toward them. "There's a plot," she'd said, her voice trembling. "Someone is going to be poisoned. In the temple." The guards had looked down at her, their expressions a mixture of pity and annoyance, an Omega with an overactive imagination. One of them sneered, "Go back to your kitchens before you get into real trouble." Dismissed, ignored, powerless. Panic clawed at her throat. She abandoned the wine flagon and crept toward the Moon Temple, her soft-soled shoes making no sound on the stone. The heavy oak doors were slightly ajar. Peeking through the crack, she saw Alpha Theodore Grayson of the Ironwood pack. He was alone, kneeling before the altar to the moon goddess. He clutched a golden chalice in one hand and his throat with the other. A dark stain was spreading across the front of his ceremonial robes. He gasped, his eyes wide with shock and pain, and collapsed onto the cold floor. Arya forgot all caution. She shoved the door open and rushed to his side, Alpha Grayson. He looked up at her, his lips blue, the scent of Shadow's Bane, a bitter almond poison from children's horror stories, was unmistakable. He grabbed her wrist, his grip surprisingly strong for a dying man. "Silvercrest," he choked, his gaze fixed on her face, on her eyes. The girl must protect. And then, with a final shuddering breath, he died in her arms. The temple doors burst open. 2 guards stood silhouetted against the light, their swords drawn. They saw her, an Omega servant, kneeling over their dead Alpha, her hands and clothes covered in his blood. The golden chalice lay near her, her scent all over it from where she'd nearly dropped it. The first Alpha to arrive on the scene was a storm of raw power and contained fury. Cain Blackthorn, the Alpha of the Shadow Ridge pack. His black hair was a stark contrast to the amber of his eyes, which seemed to glow with their own inner light. He took in the scene in a single, sweeping glance the dead Alpha, the hysterical guards, and her. His gaze lingered on her, intense and unnervingly perceptive. He didn't look at her like she was an Omega. He looked at her like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. Then, a woman in the white robes of the high priestess swept into the room, Vivian Ashford. Her beauty was serene, her silver hair coiled in an intricate braid, but her eyes were as hard and cold as diamonds. She didn't hesitate. "Seize her, Gay," Vivian commanded, her voice ringing with absolute authority. "She has murdered Alpha Grayson. She has committed the ultimate treason." The accusation fell upon Arya like a physical blow. They dragged her from the temple, through the shocked crowds, and into the center of the great arena. Vivian stood before the Council of Alphas, her voice weaving a damning story of a bitter, resentful Omega who had seized a chance to strike at the heart of their society. The evidence was circumstantial but potent, her scent on the chalice, her presence at the scene, the fabricated rumors of her supposed hatred for Alphas. The law was clear. The punishment was death, immediate. Two warriors stepped forward, their claws elongating. Arya's blood ran cold. This was it. 6 years of hiding, of surviving, only to die for a crime she didn't commit, accused by a woman who was likely the true murderer. Fear, raw and primal, ripped through her. It was a terror so profound it bypassed thought and went straight to instinct. A power she had suppressed for her entire life surged to the surface. Pain exploded behind her eyes, hot and white. A warrior grabbed her arm, and as he did, Arya's head snapped up. Her eyes, normally a muted storm gray, flashed with a brilliant, impossible light. They burned with the pure, untamed silver of the full moon. A collective gasp swept through the arena. Growls of aggression turned into murmurs of disbelief. That color. No one had seen that eye color in 20 years. Not since the last queen of the Silvercrest pack had been assassinated. It was the undeniable mark of the Silvercrest royal line. The arena erupted into chaos. "An abomination," Vivian shrieked, her composure finally cracking. A trick, kill her now. But the Alphas were hesitating, staring at her, their minds reeling. A Silvercrest alive here. Through the pandemonium, one voice cut like a blade. "Stop." It was Cain Blackthorn. He stepped forward, his presence commanding silence. He walked toward Arya, his amber eyes fixed on her silver ones. He circled her once, his gaze analytical, intense. He smelled the air around her, not just the blood and fear, but something else, something ancient. He turned to the council. "Traditional law demands an execution," he said, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the stone floor. "But older laws exist, laws that predate the pacts." He looked directly at Vivian, a clear challenge in his eyes. "I invoke the ancient right of trial by ordeal." Vivian paled. "That right is archaic. We haven't used it in centuries." "But it has never been abolished," Cain countered smoothly. He turned his attention back to Arya. "If this girl is who her eyes claim she is, then she has the right to prove her innocence before the goddess herself. Let her face the gauntlet of truth." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. If she survives the 7 trials, the moon goddess will have judged her innocent. And if she is truly the last Silvercrest, he let the implication hang in the air. The vacant, resource-rich Silvercrest territory was a prize every pack coveted. Then she must compete in the upcoming Alpha succession trials to claim her birthright. His motives were a mystery. Was he saving her life? Or was he just setting her up for a slower, more public death in trials no one had survived in living memory? The council, caught between ancient law and political opportunity, begrudgingly agreed. Arya was dragged away, not to the executioner's block, but to a cold, damp cell beneath the arena. As the heavy door boomed shut, plunging her into darkness, a memory flashed through her mind. It was fragmented, like a shard of a broken mirror, a woman's gentle voice singing a lullaby, the silver glow of moonlight filtering through leaves. and the sweet, intoxicating scent of night-blooming jasmine. Then, a whisper, as clear as if it were spoken right beside her. "Find the night walker. Together, you break the chains." The darkness of the cell was absolute, broken only by a sliver of moonlight from a high, barred window. Arya sat on the stone cot, the phantom scent of jasmine still clinging to the air. Nightwalker. The name was from old legends. A bloodline of alphas who could supposedly see flashes of the future, a bloodline as dead as her own, or so everyone believed. The scrape of a key in the lock startled her. The door swung open to reveal a broad-shouldered man in his mid-40s. His face was a roadmap of old battles, but his eyes held a weary kindness. He wore the insignia of a former Alpha commander. Marcus Stone. He introduced himself, his voice a low gravel. He stepped inside, letting the door close behind him. "I was your mother's commander, her friend." Arya stared at him, speechless. Marcus's expression softened with a pain that looked 20 years old. "Your mother would be so proud of the fight in you." He moved closer, pressing something small and folded into her hand. It felt like old parchment. She knew they were coming for her. She made plans to keep you safe. He glanced toward the door, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Trust no one, especially not Vivian. She was your mother's protégé, and her ambition was a poison long before she started using the real thing." He turned to leave, then paused. The poison that killed Grayson was Shadow's Bane. It only grows in one place, the Forbidden Darkwood, on the edge of the Shadow Ridge territory. He gave her a meaningful look before slipping back out of the cell, leaving Arya alone with 1,000 new questions. She unfolded the parchment. It was a page torn from a journal, written in a graceful feminine hand. Most of it was faded, but a strange, intricate symbol dominated the center, a spiral of thorns surrounding a crescent moon. In his private quarters, Cain Blackthorn splashed cold water on his face, trying to wash away the image of the girl's silver eyes. The dream from the night before played again in his mind. Sharp and vivid, a magnificent silver wolf. Bleeding from a dozen wounds, a hulking shadow wolf standing beside her, snarling at an unseen enemy, and above them, a blood-red moon splitting in two. He'd been having variations of the same dream for months. His beta, Rylan, a warrior as solid and dependable as his name, entered the room. The other alphas are furious. "Cain, you've risked alliances with Ironwood and Riverside by defending that Omega." "She's not an Omega," Cain growled, turning from the basin. His wolf was pacing restlessly under his skin. "A rare occurrence. You saw her eyes. You felt it, the power that rolled off her." "I felt chaos," Rylan countered. "If she is Silvercrest, she's a threat. If she isn't, she's a murderer. Either way, siding with her is a mistake." "It's a compulsion," Cain admitted, the words tasting like a weakness he couldn't afford. He felt a pull toward her, an invisible thread tightening in his chest. It wasn't logical, it wasn't strategic, but it was undeniable. "I have to know what it means." He decided to see her for himself, under the guise of an official interrogation. Cain descended to the dungeons. He found Arya not cowering in fear, but studying the journal page with fierce concentration. The accused should be begging for her life, not reading, he said, his voice echoing in the small cell. Arya looked up, her silver eyes meeting his without a trace of fear. "I don't beg, especially not for something that's mine to keep." Her defiance was like a spark to dry tinder. He felt a grudging respect. "Alpha Grayson's last words were about you," he stated, watching for her reaction. He said, "Silvercrest, the girl, protect." She replied calmly, hardly the words of a man pointing out his killer. He stepped closer, drawn by that strange pull. "Why were you there?" "I overheard a plot to poison someone in the temple. I tried to warn the guards. They dismissed me." She shrugged, a gesture of bitter resignation. The life of an Omega is cheap. You are no Omega, he said, his voice softer than he intended. He noticed they both had a small, crescent-shaped scar on their right hand, his from a training accident, hers likely from a kitchen knife. A strange coincidence. We both seem to have gaps, pieces of our childhoods that don't make sense. She looked surprised. You too? He nodded. My parents died when I was young. I remember very little before that. Impulsively, he reached out, his fingers brushing against hers as he gestured to the journal page. The moment their skin touched, a jolt of pure energy, hot and sharp, shot up both their arms. They both gasped and snatched their hands back as if burned. The air in the cell grew thick, charged with an energy neither of them understood. It was the first. Faint whisper of a mate bond, a dormant power stirring to life. But to them, it was just a shocking, inexplicable connection. What was that, she breathed, staring at her hand? Static. He lied, his own heart pounding. The air is dry down here. In the council chambers, Vivian argued passionately for Arya's immediate execution. The right of trial is a relic of a more savage time. Letting her live puts us all at risk. But the other alphas were now intrigued. The lure of the Silvercrest lands was too strong. Elena Rivers, the sharp-tongued daughter of the Riverside Alpha, made the final point. Think about it, Elena said, her cool gaze sweeping the room. If she is the last Silvercrest and you execute her without proof, you could trigger a blood feud with whatever allies her line still has. The gauntlet is the perfect solution. If she dies, the problem is solved. If she lives, well, that will be far more interesting, won't it? The council voted. The gauntlet would proceed. Later that night, in the hidden catacombs beneath the Moon Temple, Vivian met with a group of figures shrouded in gray cloaks, their faces hidden by silver masks, the purest circle. The girl cannot be allowed to complete the trials, Vivian said, her voice stripped of its serene facade, now cold and hard as granite. Her bloodline awakens things we have worked for 2 decades to keep buried. What would you have us do? High Priestess, one of the figures asked. Vivian produced a small vial containing a few drops of dark blood she had secretly collected from the temple floor where Arya had knelt. I have what I need for the ritual, but it will be more powerful if she is weaker. See to it that she doesn't survive the first trial. The Maze of Truth is full of opportunities for accidents. She handed the vial to her subordinate, and if she somehow does survive, her connection to the Blackthorn Alpha will be her undoing. A mate bond can be a powerful weapon or a devastating weakness. Arya was taken to the preparation chambers for the gauntlet. As she waited, another figure appeared at her door. It was Elena Rivers. I'm supposed to be your rival, Elena said without preamble, holding out a small parcel of bread and cheese, but I like a good underdog story. She leaned closer, her voice a low whisper. Watch the High Priestess. She's not who she pretends to be. She wants you dead far too badly for it to be about justice. Elena left as silently as she arrived, leaving Arya to ponder the warning as she tried to sleep. A vivid dream took hold of her. She was a little girl, no older than 5, running through a moonlit forest. Her mother, a beautiful woman with the same silver eyes, was running with her. Remember who you are, little moon, her mother's voice echoed in the dream, full of love and desperation. You are silver and steel, born of the first light. Arya woke with a start, the words branded on her soul. She wasn't just a servant girl, she was silver and steel, and she was done hiding. The entrance to the Maze of Truth was a gaping stone maw that seemed to swallow the light. Arya stood before it, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. The entire summit had gathered to watch. From his high seat, Cain Blackthorn's amber eyes found hers, and for a fleeting moment, she felt a strange sense of connection, as if he were standing right beside her. The first trial begins, Vivian's voice boomed. magically amplified. Navigate the labyrinth, evade the shadow beasts, and face the truths within. Survive, and you take one step closer to redemption. Fail, and the maze will be your tomb. Arya took a deep breath and plunged into the darkness. The air inside was cold and smelled of damp earth and something else, something foul, like old magic. The walls shifted and changed, creating a disorienting, impossible geometry. Within minutes, she was hopelessly lost. A low growl echoed from the corridor ahead. A shadow beast, a creature of nightmare-given form, slunk into view. It was vaguely wolf-like, but its body was made of shifting smoke, and its eyes burned with malevolent red light. Her Omega-level strength was useless against it. As it lunged, she scrambled away, her mind racing. She had to be smarter. She led the beast on a chase, ducking through a narrow opening and triggering a rockfall that temporarily trapped it. As she caught her breath, the maze played its first trick. The corridor in front of her shimmered, and an illusion took shape. It was her, standing over Alpha Grayson's body, a bloody knife in her hand, a cruel, triumphant smile on her face. "You wanted him dead," the illusion whispered, its voice her own. "You hated the Alphas for making you small." A wave of despair washed over her. What if it was true? What if some dark part of her had wanted revenge? The walls of the maze seemed to press in, suffocating her. A dead end appeared before her, a solid wall of stone. She was trapped. "The maze responds to intent," Marcus had told her in a brief, whispered warning, "You must believe your truths." Arya closed her eyes, shutting out the horrifying image. She focused on the memory of Grayson's dying words. Protect her. He wouldn't have said that to his killer. "I am not a murderer," she shouted, her voice ringing with newfound conviction. The stone wall in front of her dissolved into mist, revealing a new path. She ran, but the maze wasn't done with her. It conjured illusions of her deepest fears. She saw herself cast out, alone and worthless. She saw herself failing, a disgrace to the Silvercrest name she now carried. Each time, a wall blocked her path. Each time, she had to dig deep and find the truth to break the illusion. "I am not powerless," she yelled at an image of herself begging for scraps. The wall vanished. "I deserve to live," she screamed at a vision of her own execution. The path opened. She was bleeding, exhausted, and hunted by a growing pack of shadow beasts. She used her wits, creating traps, using the shifting walls of the maze to her advantage. She was surviving, but only barely. Finally, she reached the center of the labyrinth, a single chamber, empty except for a large, ornate mirror. The last of the shadow beasts cornered her, their growls a symphony of death. The mirror shimmered, but it didn't show her reflection. Instead, it showed the face of a woman with kind, sad, silver eyes, her mother. "The final truth is the deepest one," her mother's voice whispered in her mind. "Who are you?" This was it. All the years of hiding, of pretending to be someone she wasn't. It all came down to this moment. She looked at the beasts, then at her mother's image, and drew herself up to her full height. Her voice, magically amplified by the maze, boomed out across the entire arena for all to hear. "I am Arya Silvercrest, daughter of Luna Queen Isadora, and I will not hide any more." The moment the words left her lips, a brilliant flash of silver light erupted from the mirror, vaporizing the shadow beasts. The walls of the entire maze dissolved, revealing her standing, bloodied but unbowed, in the center of the arena. The crowd was in an uproar. The impossible was confirmed. Vivian Ashford's face was a mask of fury and, for a split second, pure terror. Marcus Stone, standing in the crowd, had tears streaming down his face. And in the Alpha's box, Cain Blackthorne shot to his feet. His wolf, the shadow beast he kept so tightly controlled, surged forward with a force that nearly broke him. A primal, Possessive roar built in his chest, a sound of pure recognition. Mate, silver, mine. He fought it down, his knuckles white as he gripped the stone balustrade. Arya's legs finally gave out. The pain, the exhaustion, the blood loss, it all hit her at once. She collapsed onto the sand. Before the official medics could even move, Cain vaulted over the balustrade, landing on the arena floor with a grace that defied his size. He was at her side in an instant. "Get my pack's healer here now," he commanded, and no one dared to argue. As the healer worked frantically to stabilize her, Arya's unconscious body twitched. A ripple of change moved through her. A partial shift brought on by extreme stress. The back of her tunic tore slightly, revealing skin that shimmered. Distinctive silver markings like whorls of moonlight appeared on her shoulder blades, the royal markings of the Silver Crest line, described only in the oldest legends. Whispers spread like fire through the crowd. The silver moon returns. The prophecy. Arya's eyes fluttered open hours later. The world was a blur of soft light and the scent of antiseptic herbs. She was in the healer's wing. A dark figure sat vigil by her bed. Cain. "Why?" she whispered, her voice a dry rasp. "Why are you helping me?" He leaned closer, his amber eyes searching her face. The raw intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. "I don't know yet," he admitted, his voice a low rumble that soothed her frayed nerves. "But I intend to find out." As she drifted back to sleep, he gently moved a stray lock of silver blonde hair from her shoulder. In doing so, he revealed a small, delicate birthmark she'd had her whole life. A perfect crescent moon. It was identical to the one that haunted his dreams. 2 days passed in a blur of healing salves and feverish dreams. When Arya finally awoke with a clear head, she found herself in a private room in the healer's wing. With 2 of Cain's Shadow Ridge warriors stationed outside her door, she was a prisoner and a patient all at once. Elena Rivers appeared in her doorway, carrying a tray of food that didn't taste like bland medicinal broth. "Figured you were sick of gruel," Elena said. Setting the tray down, "Don't get used to it. I'm still planning on beating you in the succession trials." Arya managed a weak smile. "Thanks, I think." "There are 6 more trials," Elena continued, her tone shifting from rival to informant. "The council is arguing over the order, but the next one is in 3 days. The hunt. They'll release you into the Blackwood Forest and hunt you with a pack of elite warriors. It's designed to be impossible." She paused, studying Arya's face. "You should know. My father promised me to Cain as part of a pack alliance, a political arrangement." Arya's stomach twisted. Of course. An alpha as powerful as Cain would have a chosen mate. Elena seemed to read her mind. "Don't look so grim. There's no bond, just a treaty. And I've seen the way he looks at you. He's never looked at anyone like that before." A wry smile touched her lips. "Frankly, it's a relief. He's far too brooding for my tastes. Just be careful. Arya, you've upset a lot of very powerful people." Later that day, Marcus Stone arrived, disguised as a healer's assistant. "Time for your physical therapy," he announced gruffly, helping her to a secluded training courtyard. His idea of therapy was combat training. For the next 3 days, under the guise of restoring her strength, he taught her how to fight, not like an Omega, defensively, but like an Alpha. He showed her how to use an opponent's weight against them, how to strike with precision, how to channel her inner wolf's ferocity without fully shifting. "Your mother was the most powerful Luna in a generation," Marcus told her between sparring sessions. She was trying to unite the packs, to undo the damage of the Great Schism 200 years ago. They killed her because they feared that unity. They wanted to end the Silvercrest line because your blood holds the key to something they are terrified of. He wouldn't say what. You have to discover it yourself. But know this, you were born to lead, not to serve. Start acting like it. Cain was facing a rebellion within his own pack. The Shadow Ridge elders demanded he withdraw his support for Arya, his alliance with the Riverside Pack, and by extension their rich trade routes, was in jeopardy. "You are risking decades of stability for a stranger," Rylan argued, his loyalty warring with his confusion. Why? Cain. Why her? Cain stood before a hearth, staring into the flames, because my wolf has never been silent until I am near her, because my dreams are filled with her, because I think she might be my mate. The word, spoken aloud for the first time, hung in the air between them. Rylan was stunned into silence. A true mate, one was a sacred, almost mythical thing, a destiny chosen by the moon goddess herself. It superseded any treaty. Driven by this new certainty, Cain began digging through the oldest scrolls in the Shadow Ridge archives. He found it in a dusty text about the Great Schism, a forgotten history. Before the 5 great packs had separated, the Silvercrest and Nightwalker bloodlines had been intrinsically linked, bound by an ancient pact to protect the balance of their world. Their separation had been the first and deepest crack in the foundation of their society. Meanwhile, Vivian was moving her own pieces across the board in another secret meeting of the purest circle. She unrolled a map of the 5 territories. "Arya Silvercrest's survival accelerates our timeline," she announced, her voice calm and chilling. She tapped the map. "The moonbound prophecy is clear. When Silver Moon and Shadow Night unite, the curse of dilution breaks, but the old power must fall." She looked at the masked faces. "We are the old power. We are the guardians of the pure bloodlines. If they unite, our way of life will be destroyed. They will champion the mixed bloods, the weak." A flashback, sharp as glass, seared her mind herself. 19 years younger, watching from the shadows as her assassins silenced Queen Isadora. It had been her first great act for the cause. "We will not allow that to happen," she continued, her composure absolute. "We will introduce a purifying agent, a plague that targets those with diluted bloodlines. We will show the world the cost of their weakness, and we will blame it on the rise of this false queen." The first reports began trickling in the next day. A handful of wolves in the outer territories had fallen ill with a mysterious sickness. They couldn't shift. Their legendary healing abilities failed them. They were wasting away. The one thing they all had in common, they were from families with mixed pack heritage. In an emergency council session, Vivian planted the seed. "Perhaps the moon goddess is showing her displeasure," she suggested, her face a mask of pious concern. "She disapproves of these impure unions." Cain needed to see Arya again. He found her in the training courtyard, moving with a newfound grace and power that stole his breath. The tension between them was a living thing, a palpable force that thickened the air. "The next trial is the hunt," he said, his voice rougher than he intended. "The odds are designed for failure." "Then I'll just have to beat the odds," she shot back, not missing a step in her practice forms. They talked for a long time, sharing the fragmented memories of their childhoods, the crushing weight of expectations they'd both felt. He wanted to tell her everything about the dream, the prophecy, the mate bond he was now certain of. But the words wouldn't come. It was too soon, too dangerous. Arya, sensing his inner turmoil, stopped her training and stepped toward him. "You're carrying the weight of the world." "Alpha," she said softly, to comfort him. She reached out and placed her hand on his forearm. The shock was 10 times stronger than before. It wasn't just a jolt. It was a wildfire. It roared through their veins, a torrent of raw, untamed energy. They both gasped, their eyes locking. In that moment, Cain saw a flash of a silver wolf running beside a shadow wolf under a canopy of ancient trees. Arya saw a pair of amber eyes watching over her as a child. "What is that?" she asked, her voice a shaky whisper. "I don't know," he lied, though his heart screamed the truth. "It's us." He pulled his arm back, putting distance between them. We need an alliance. If you survive the gauntlet, Shadow Ridge will support your claim to the Silver Crest lands. In return, you will ally your pack with mine. It was a cold, political offer that felt like a betrayal of the inferno he felt inside. Agreed, she said, her voice equally formal, though her silver eyes were filled with a confusion that mirrored his own. That night, alone in her room, Arya finally looked at the journal page Marcus had given her, tracing the symbol with her finger. She suddenly understood. It wasn't just a drawing. It was a map, a fragment showing a hidden location in the Forbidden Territories known as the Moonwell, the legendary source of all werewolf magic. Beneath the map, a line of text, almost too faded to read, suddenly seemed to glow under the moonlight. When the plague comes, only the first blood can heal. Two must stand as one at the well when the twin moons rise. She tucked the page away, her mind reeling. What plague? What twin moons? Outside her window, perched on a stone gargoyle, a single white raven watched her with intelligent, unblinking eyes. It was Vivian's spy, and it had seen everything. The horn blew, a deep, mournful sound that echoed through the blackwood forest. The hunt had begun. Arya stood at the edge of the sprawling woods, a silver cuff locked around her wrist. It pulsed with a cold energy. Suppressing her ability to fully shift, she could access her wolf's senses, its speed, its strength, but its true form was locked away. 4 others stood with her, all criminals given a chance to earn their freedom by surviving the next 24 hours. They were the prey, and hunting them was an elite team of warriors led by Kane's second-in-command, Rylan. Arya knew this wasn't just about survival, it was a test of character. "We have to work together," she said, addressing the other challengers. "If we split up, they'll pick us off one by one." A big, arrogant former beta named Derek scoffed. "I don't work with Omega-level trash. Every wolf for himself." A cold-eyed rogue named Natasha simply turned and melted into the trees without a word. But 2 others listened. Finn, a young wolf imprisoned for stealing medicine for his sick sister, and Kara, an older wolf who'd killed her abusive mate in self-defense. They both nodded. "We're with you," Finn said. Their small team of 3 moved quickly, using the dense undergrowth for cover. It wasn't long before they heard the howls of the hunters. They were close. "They're too fast," Kara panted. "They found us already." Arya's enhanced hearing picked up something else, Derek's voice, talking to the hunters. "He sold us out," she hissed, pushing Finn and Kara into a thicket of thorns. "He traded our location for his freedom." The hunters, led by Rylan, descended on their position. Rylan's orders from Kane had been clear: test her, but don't break her. He hadn't expected her to lead. Arya's group fought with desperate ingenuity. She used her knowledge of herbs gleaned from years in the kitchens to create a thick, acrid smoke from damp leaves and irritant plants, disorienting their pursuers. Finn, quick and agile, set up tripwires and snares. During a frantic skirmish, Kara went down, a deep gash in her leg. She couldn't run. "Leave me," Kara urged, her face pale with pain. "Save yourselves." Arya looked at Kara, then at the forest where safety lay. She thought of her mother's words, "You are silver and steel. Leaders didn't abandon their pack." "No," Arya said, her voice firm. "We don't leave anyone behind." She packed moss into Kara's wound. "Finn, get her to the caves by the river. I'll lead them away." "It's suicide," Finn protested. "It's a plan," she corrected. "Go." Arya created a clear trail, deliberately drawing the hunters after her. She ran for hours, her lungs burning, her muscles screaming. It was a deadly game of cat and mouse, and she was always one step away from the claws of the hunters. Meanwhile, Finn, inspired by Arya's loyalty, hadn't run far. After hiding Kara, he doubled back. He found Natasha, the rogue, about to deliver a killing blow to one of the other challengers, trying to thin out the competition. Finn intervened, but Natasha was far more experienced. She had him pinned in moments. Just as her claws descended, a blur of motion slammed into her. It was Arya. She had circled back, anticipating betrayal. The two women fought, a brutal whirlwind of fists and feet. Natasha was stronger, but Arya was smarter, more desperate. She used Natasha's overconfidence, ducking under a wild swing and using the rogue's own momentum to send her crashing into a tree. Arya disarmed her and had her at knife point. "Finish it," Natasha spat, expecting death. Arya looked into her eyes, saw the flicker of fear, and lowered the blade. She tied Natasha securely to the tree instead. "I'm not going to become a killer to prove I'm not a killer," she said, before disappearing back into the woods. In the final hour of the trial, the hunters finally cornered Arya, Finn, and the injured Kara near the riverbank. They were surrounded, exhausted, and out of options. Ryland stepped forward, his own claws extended, ready to end the trial. "It's over," he said, not without a hint of respect. He lunged. But as he moved, something inside Arya snapped. A deep, primal power she didn't know she possessed erupted from her core. Her silver eyes blazed with light, and a single, silent command echoed not in the air, but in the minds of every wolf present. "Stop." Every single wolf Rylan, the hunters. Finn froze mid-motion, their bodies locked by an invisible force. It wasn't a request. It was an absolute, undeniable command, an alpha command. And it had come from the mouth of a girl who was supposedly an Omega. A horn blew in the distance. The 24 hours were up. Arya, Finn, and Kara had survived. The arena was in stunned silence as they emerged from the woods, an Omega wielding Alpha command. It was impossible. Vivian was quick to dismiss it. A fluke dark magic, no doubt. But Cain knew better. He stood in the Alpha's box, his body rigid. The moment he felt her command, his own wolf had howled in triumph within him. A jubilant cry of recognition for its alpha mate, its queen. He could no longer deny it, could no longer rationalize the pull. The bond was real, and it was more powerful than he had ever imagined. Overwhelmed, he turned and stalked away, needing to be alone before he did something rash, like claim her in front of all 5 packs. That night, Arya was hailed as a hero by the lower-ranking wolves, but eyed with deep suspicion by the nobility. She snuck out of her chambers to check on Finn and Kara in the medical wing. Finn was fine, but Kara was shivering uncontrollably, her skin pale and clammy. The gash on her leg, which should have been healing, was red and inflamed. "What's wrong with her?" Arya asked the healer. The healer shook his head, his expression grim. "I don't know. Her healing factor isn't working. It's like her wolf is fading. Her symptoms match those first few cases of that mysterious plague." He lowered his voice. 3 more cases were reported from the Riverside Pack today, if this spreads. A chill that had nothing to do with the night air washed over Arya. Something terrible was unfolding, and she was standing at the very heart of the storm. Cain drove his fist into a training dummy, splitting the packed leather. He'd retreated to a secluded part of his territory, the raw, untamed landscape a mirror of the war raging inside him. His father's words echoed in his memory, a brutal lesson beaten into him as a boy. Mates are weaknesses. An alpha's sentiment will be his pack's downfall. But what he felt for Arya wasn't sentiment. It was a force of nature. The dream came to him again, this time clearer than ever. The silver wolf was dying, her light fading. The shadow wolf stood before a choice, a path that led to her, and another that led to his pack. He couldn't have both. "You feel it, don't you?" The bond. Marcus Stone's voice was quiet, but it cut through Cain's turmoil. He had followed him from the summit. Cain didn't deny it, my whole life. I thought my bloodline didn't have mates, that the visions replaced the bond." "Your bloodline doesn't have a mate," Marcus corrected. "It has one, a single, destined mate, chosen once in a millennium. Your bloodline and hers were meant to reunite. Cain, it's not a coincidence. It is destiny." Marcus then told him of the moon-bound prophecy in its entirety, the words painting a grim picture of a coming curse and a sacrifice required to break it. "But beware, the breaking requires sacrifice, and those who cling to old power will burn the world before they fall." The choice was clear and agonizing. Uphold his duty to the alliance with Elena's pack, ensuring stability and prosperity for his people, or follow the sacred bond to Arya, the destiny his soul craved, and risk plunging his pack into political chaos. He sought out Elena. He found her in her family's library, surrounded by dusty scrolls. He came to break their engagement, to do the honorable thing. Before he could speak, she looked up and said, "You're her mate, aren't you?" Cain was stunned. Elena let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for years. "Thank the goddess," she whispered. "I was wondering how I was going to get out of marrying you." She saw his shocked expression and laughed. "Oh, don't look so offended. You're handsome and powerful, but you brood. Constantly. It's exhausting." Her tone turned serious. "I've been doing my own research. The bloodless plague. All the victims are from packs that have intermarried, mixing the ancient bloodlines." She unrolled a scroll. The old texts say that when the 5 tribes scattered and became the 5 packs, they were warned. Diluting the pure bloodlines too much would weaken us all. The purist circle believes they can fix this by purging the mixed bloods. They see this plague as a divine sign. Cain stared at her, seeing her for the first time not as a political pawn, but as a brilliant, capable ally. "If the prophecy is real," Elena said, her eyes sharp, "you and Arya might be the only ones who can stop a genocide. I'll help you. I'll keep up the public pretense of our engagement. It will keep my father's pack from turning on you while you figure this out." Arya, with Marcus's help, had found a hidden compartment in her mother's old quarters. Inside was a single, sealed letter. Her hands trembled as she broke the wax seal. "My dearest Moonbeam, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and the darkness I fought has returned. Do not despair. The plague can only be stopped by reuniting what was broken. Find the Nightwalker descendant. His bloodline is the shadow to your light. Your bond is the key. They will try to stop you at every turn. Trust your heart. Trust the moon. I love you always. Isadora." Nightwalker descendant, it had to be Cain. The dream, the connection, the prophecy. It was all falling into place. She found him in the training arena, late at night, working out his frustrations on another dummy. She strode onto the sand, her mother's letter clutched in her hand. "Stop hiding behind politics and alliances," she demanded, her voice ringing with emotion. "Why are you really helping me?" The air crackled, the tension between them, always simmering, finally boiled over. "Why do you care so much if I live or die?" she pushed, stepping into his space, forcing him to look at her. "Because Cain stopped, his jaw tight, his inner wolf battling for control." Arya took another step, until their chests were almost touching. She could feel the heat radiating from him, smell the scent of pine and rage, and something that was uniquely him. "Because what?" Cain, she whispered, tilting her head back to look him in the eye. He looked down at her, his amber eyes molten. The battle within him was lost. "Because you're my mate," he growled, the words torn from his soul. The confession hung in the air, a stunning, world-altering truth. The fight went out of her, replaced by a wave of shock and then a profound sense of coming home. In the next second, they collided. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was a desperate, hungry fusion of lips and teeth and pent-up longing. It was the culmination of dreams and prophecies, of a 20-year-old mystery and a bond that refused to be denied. The moment their lips met, the mate bond slammed into place, fully and irrevocably. It was a tidal wave of sensation and emotion. Arya felt Kane's loneliness, his crushing sense of duty, his fierce protectiveness. Kane felt Arya's resilience, her hidden pain, her unyielding hope. Visions flooded their minds, fragmented memories of their parents together, glimpses of a shared past they never knew, and flashes of a future where they stood together against a tide of darkness. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathless, shaking, their souls irrevocably intertwined. This doesn't change anything," Arya said, her voice unsteady, trying to cling to the world that had made sense a minute ago. Kane gently brushed his thumb over her swollen lips, his gaze intense. "It changes everything." They agreed to keep the bond a secret. For now, it was too powerful, too dangerous a card to play while the gauntlet was still in progress. As they separated and walked away from the arena, neither of them saw the figure watching from the deepest shadows. Vivienne Ashford smiled. She couldn't kill Arya in the trials. The girl was too resilient. But a mate bond could be twisted. It could be used to break not just one wolf, but two. She dispatched a messenger with a single, coded order: activate Phase 2, accelerate the plague. They must be desperate before the endgame. The next 3 days were a descent into hell. Cases of the bloodless plague didn't just double, they quadrupled. Entire packs were quarantined. Panic ignited. Fanned by the whispers of Vivienne's purest followers, the goddess is punishing the impure. Riots broke out. Mixed blood families were targeted, shunned, and attacked. The council debated postponing Arya's remaining trials. "Absolutely not," Vivienne argued in the emergency session, her voice a soothing balm on their frayed nerves. "The gauntlet is a holy rite. Proving the goddess's favor is more important now than ever. We must show the people that strength and purity will be rewarded." Secretly, she knew her grand ritual required the energy from Arya's trials. She couldn't let them stop. Arya, however, had made her own choice. Instead of resting, she volunteered in the makeshift plague wards, the healers, overwhelmed and desperate, accepted any help they could get. She worked tirelessly, cleaning sick rooms, comforting the dying, her heart breaking with every life that slipped away. Working alongside Kane's pack doctor, she discovered something by accident: a small amount of her blood, given to a critically ill wolf in a desperate, last-ditch transfusion, caused a miraculous, if temporary, recovery. The wolf's fever broke, his healing factor kicked in. It only lasted for a day, but it was a day. She kept her discovery a secret, but began donating her blood to the most desperate cases, weakening herself just to give others a few more hours. While Arya fought the plague on the front lines, Kane hunted its source. He tracked the first cluster of cases to a remote village bordering the Darkwood. There, he found what he was looking for: the remains of a dark ritual. Traces of Shadow's Bane, the same poison that had killed Alpha Grayson, and a discarded silver mask of the purest circle. This wasn't a natural disease. It was an attack. Marcus found Kane at the site and filled in the final, horrifying pieces of the puzzle. The curse isn't a disease. Kane, it's a fail-safe, built into our blood by the moon goddess. When the 5 original bloodlines became too diluted, our connection to her magic began to fray. The curse is our own bodies forgetting how to be wolves. It was designed to slowly turn us mortal to prevent a more catastrophic outcome. "How do you stop it?" Kane demanded. "You reset the balance," Marcus said gravely. "Only a true union, a full mate bonding ritual between 2 pure-blood alphas can reestablish the connection. It realigns all werewolves with the original magic." He looked Kane straight in the eye. "You are the last Nightwalker, and she is the last Silvercrest." They met that night in the Moon Temple garden, the air thick with the scent of jasmine. Under the stars, they shared their discoveries, the manufactured plague, her blood's temporary cure, the true nature of the curse. "We're the key," Arya whispered, the weight of it settling on her. "The prophecy, my mother's letter, it's all about us. Two must stand as one at the well when the twin moons rise." Cain quoted from the journal page she'd shown him. The twin moon eclipse, a rare celestial event, was only 2 weeks away. They had to complete a bonding ritual at the moon well. But there were impossible hurdles. Arya still had to survive the gauntlet. Cain was still publicly engaged to Elena, and Vivian was watching their every move. Their frantic planning was interrupted by Elena herself, who appeared from the shadows. "You've been followed," she hissed. "Vivian's spies are everywhere. She knows you're meeting. She'll use it to claim you're conspiring to rig the trials." They needed a new strategy. "Then we give her a different story to tell," Elena said, her mind working furiously. She looked at them both, her expression grim but resolved. "I'll create a scandal. Tomorrow, I will publicly accuse Cain of betraying our engagement. I will name you, Arya, as his mistress. It will look like a forbidden affair, not a political conspiracy. It will tarnish all our reputations, but it might buy you the time you need." Before they could argue, a temple guard appeared. "Arya Silvercrest, the High Priestess has summoned you for an emergency council meeting." It was a trap. Arya knew it the moment she walked into the council chamber. The room was filled with hostile alphas. Cain was pointedly absent, having been summoned to a different emergency. Vivian stood in the center of the room, her face a mask of sorrowful duty. "It is with a heavy heart that I bring this to the council," she began. "We have discovered that the challenger, Arya Silvercrest, has been using illicit means to influence the outcome of these sacred trials." She presented her evidence sworn testimony from spies who saw Arya and Cain meeting in secret. She twisted their alliance into a conspiracy, their bond into dark seduction. She has used her magic to ensnare the powerful Alpha Blackthorn, turning him against his allies and his betrothed. She is a contaminant, a poison in our ranks. The council, already gripped by plague-fueled paranoia, was easily swayed. "The remaining 3 trials will be compressed," the presiding Alpha declared, his voice booming. "The Crucible, the Abyss, and the Omega's Choice. She will complete them all within the next 72 hours. No rest, no recovery. If she fails even one, she is guilty of all charges and will be put to death." Cain, returning from his false errand, burst into the room just in time to hear the verdict. He could do nothing. To defend her now would only prove Vivian's accusations. He locked eyes with Arya across the chamber, his face a mask of helpless fury. She gave him a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of her head. "Don't. Not yet." They were caught in Vivian's web, and the only way out was for Arya to walk through fire. The air in the crucible was so hot it felt like breathing sandpaper. Arya stood on a narrow ledge overlooking a cavern of bubbling lava, the heat blistering her skin through her thin tunic. This was the 3rd trial. She had to retrieve a sacred stone from an altar on the far side of the chamber. She had 3 hours. Every step was agony. She leaped from one precarious rock platform to another, the volcanic gas stinging her eyes and lungs. The radiant heat was a physical assault, designed to break a wolf's legendary endurance. She felt her own wolf whimpering within her, seeking retreat. "I am silver and steel," she thought, gritting her teeth. "I was born for this." She thought of the sick and dying wolves in the wards, of her mother's sacrifice, of Cain's furious, desperate eyes. She would not fail them. The intense heat began to play tricks on her mind. The shimmering air coalesced into visions. She saw the night of her mother's murder with horrifying clarity, masked assassins storming their chambers, her mother hiding her in a secret passage, her last words a desperate plea, "Run, little moon, and never look back." She saw a future where Cain died trying to protect her, his amber eyes fading to gray. She saw packs turning on each other, the world consumed by the plague and war. She saw herself becoming as ruthless and cruel as Vivian, sitting on a throne of bones. She fought through the hallucinations. Her focus narrowed to a single point: the altar. There, resting on a pedestal of obsidian, was the stone. But as she drew closer, she saw that the altar itself was carved with an ancient mural. It depicted 5 wolves, each representing one of the great bloodlines, standing in a circle around a glowing pool, the Moonwell. The sacred stone wasn't just a rock. It was a piece of the Moonwell itself, humming with a quiet, ancient power. The moment her fingers touched its smooth, cool surface, a vision crashed into her mind. It was her mother, Queen Isadora, standing right where Arya stood now. 20 years ago, she was performing a ritual, pouring her own life force into a similar stone, her body weakening as the plague receded across the lands. A terrible realization dawned on Arya. The cure requires a sacrifice of life energy from the pure bloodlines. It took my mother's life. Will it take mine? She could leave the stone, forfeit the trial, save her strength for the next 2 impossible tasks. But she knew this stone was crucial. It was the key. She wrapped her burned fingers around it and turned to leave. A deep groaning sound echoed through the chamber. The path she had taken was collapsing into the lava below. Her only way out was a narrow, vertical chimney shaft, a treacherous climb as the chamber began to flood with molten rock. Clutching the stone, she scrambled up the shaft, the rock searing her hands, her feet. Lava licked at her heels. She clawed her way upward, driven by pure instinct, and collapsed onto the ledge at the entrance just as the chamber below was consumed by fire. She had survived, but the cost was severe. She emerged from the crucible and collapsed, unconscious before she even hit the ground. 3rd-degree burns covered nearly 1/3 of her body. The healers worked frantically, their faces grim. She can't continue. The head healer told the council, her body is shutting down. The next trial will kill her. Cain, his voice shaking with a rage he could barely contain, demanded they stop. This isn't a trial, it's a public execution. Stop it now. Vivian stepped forward, her expression one of deep sympathy. It is tragic, but the law is the law. Her guilt or innocence is in the hands of the goddess now, not ours. The council, swayed by her words and their own fear, refused to intervene. Arya woke 12 hours later, her body a landscape of pain. Cain was at her bedside, his face etched with worry. "You have to stop this, Arya," he pleaded, his voice raw. "You'll die." "If I stop, everyone dies," she rasped, her throat raw from the volcanic fumes. The plague was spreading faster. She clutched the Moonwell stone, which felt cool against her feverish skin. "I saw what the cure requires. Cain, I saw what my mother did." She told him about the vision, about the sacrifice of life force. His face hardened. "Then we find another way. I will not lose you." "You might not have a choice," she whispered, her eyes drifting shut. Just outside the healer's wing, a new cry went up. The first victim of the plague within the summit's walls had died. It was a child, no older than 7. The game had changed. The clock was ticking faster now, not in days, but in hours. 18 hours. That was all the recovery time they allowed her before the 4th trial. Still wrapped in bandages, every movement an exercise in agony, Arya was forced to the edge of a deep chasm known as the Abyss. The rules are simple. The trial master announced, "Find the exit in the underground cavern system. You have 6 hours. You have no light but what your own senses can provide." He neglected to mention that the caverns were also home to creatures that hunted in absolute darkness. They lowered her into the crushing blackness. Her wolf, weakened and injured, could not grant her night vision. She was effectively blind. The air was cold and damp, filled with the skittering sounds of things moving just beyond her reach. Her burned skin screamed in protest with every step. Her healing factor, already taxed, was failing. She stumbled through the labyrinthine tunnels, running on sheer will. Soon, the creatures attacked pale, sightless hunters with razor-sharp claws. She fought them off, but they were relentless, their attacks coming from all sides. She was tiring, losing blood, losing hope. Up above, Cain was a caged animal. He paced the edge of the chasm, listening to the muffled sounds of her fight. He couldn't stand it. He was an alpha. His mate was in danger. He strode toward the council platform. "I invoke the alpha's right of substitution," he roared. The ancient law allowed an alpha to take a challenger's place in a single trial, but it came at a great price. To do so, he had to publicly claim the challenger as his chosen mate and a member of his pack. It would confirm all of Vivian's accusations. It would shatter his alliances. It would be political suicide. "Don't do it." Marcus grabbed his arm, his grip like iron. "If you do this now, Vivian wins. She'll have you both removed from power for conspiracy, and the real cure will die with you. Wait, we need proof." As if on cue, Elena arrived, breathless. "We found it," she gasped, pressing a scroll into Cain's hand. Vivian's connection, a secret supplier of Shadow's Bane from a rogue clan she supports. "We have proof she's behind the plague, but we need time to present it." "Hold on. Cain, just a little longer." Torn, agonized, Cain watched the timer counting down the minutes of Arya's trial. Down in the abyss, Arya was on her knees, cornered, the creatures closed in for the kill. She was done. She had nothing left. As she braced for the end, a voice whispered in her mind, her mother's voice. "You are not alone in the dark. Little moon, you carry the light within you." The stone, the sacred stone from the crucible, was still tucked in a pouch at her belt. Her numb fingers fumbled for it. The moment she touched it, it reacted to the pure royal blood that coated her hand. A soft silver light began to glow, pushing back the oppressive darkness. The creatures, accustomed to absolute black, shrieked and recoiled from the light. It was a beacon, a guide, using the stone's glow. Arya found the path, navigating the tunnels until she saw a sliver of daylight. She crawled out of the exit cavern with just 3 minutes to spare and collapsed onto the ground. The crowd, who had all assumed she was dead, was shocked into silence. Even Vivian's serene composure was shaken. Cain didn't wait. He leaped into the chasm, gathering her limp form into his arms and carrying her out himself, all protocol be damned, as he held her, their auras, visible only to the keenest wolf senses, pulsed in perfect sync, a shimmering halo of silver and shadow. The truth of their bond was now undeniable to anyone who cared to look. He laid her gently on a cot in the medical wing. "You're insane," he whispered, his voice thick with relief and terror. "Takes one to know one," she breathed, her eyes barely open. "One more trial," he said, his voice hardening with resolve. "Then this is over. I'm taking you away from all of this." "We both know we can't run," she whispered. "We have to finish this." While they spoke, Elena and Marcus were making their move. They followed the lead on the scroll, tracking the rogue supplier to a hidden laboratory deep in the Darkwood. What they found was a nightmare. Vials of cultivated plague, ritual books describing a great purge to purify the bloodlines, and Vivian's own notes, detailing her monstrous plan to seize control in the ensuing chaos. They had the proof they needed to destroy her. But Vivian knew her time was running out. She decided to accelerate her endgame. From her hidden stores, she released a new, modified strain of the bloodless plague, a strain that was airborne. Within hours, hundreds of wolves at the summit fell ill. Panic erupted into full-blown chaos. The plague was no longer a distant threat. It was in the air they breathed. The twin moon eclipse was 5 days away. But now, it felt like a lifetime. Arya's final trial was scheduled for 16 hours from now. As she drifted in and out of a painful, restless sleep, she dreamed of the moon well. She and Cain were standing together as the moon split in two. A powerful, feminine voice echoed in the dream, seeming to come from the moon itself. "The price of breaking the curse is high. Are you prepared to pay it?" She woke to find Cain holding her hand. His head bowed. He looked up, his amber eyes meeting hers. "Whatever comes," he said, his voice a vow. "We face it together." "Together," she agreed. Neither of them knew that Vivian was already ensuring the final trial would be her last. The fifth trial, the Omega's choice, was not a physical battle, but a spiritual one. Arya found herself standing not in an arena, but in a strange, misty space that felt outside of time. A vision appeared before her two paths. On one, a surge of raw alpha power was offered to her. To claim it, she only had to kill a single weak wolf to prove her strength. The wolf was Finn, the young ally she had made during the hunt. On the other path, she could refuse the power and instead use her own energy to heal him. She didn't hesitate. Strength without compassion is tyranny. She declared, "I choose to heal." The vision of Finn smiled at her, and the alpha power faded away. She had chosen. But she had gained no advantage. The second vision was more cruel. She saw Cain, his body racked with the airborne plague, dying before her eyes. She held the sacred Moonwell stone. She could use its power to cure him instantly, but doing so would shatter the stone, destroying their only hope for a large-scale cure. The alternative was to leave him to his fate and preserve the stone for the thousands of others. The vision was so real she could feel his pain through their bond, a phantom agony that tore at her soul. Tears streamed down her face. "I love you," she sobbed, "but I can't let thousands die for one. Forgive me." She chose her duty as a leader over her heart as a mate. The vision of Cain faded. The test was over, but it had carved a fresh wound in her spirit. The third vision was of Vivian, bound and helpless. A voice offered Arya the choice: justice or mercy. She could execute Vivian for her crimes, or spare her and trust in the rule of law. The mist swirled, showing Arya flashes of Vivian's past, a little girl watching her mixed-blood family die from a forgotten plague, her grief twisting into a hateful ideology. Arya looked at the cowering image of her nemesis. "You became the monster you feared," she said, her voice filled with a strange pity. "But I will not become you. The cycle of revenge ends with me." She chose mercy. The mist cleared. A final test remained. A mirror appeared, showing her own reflection. "You have chosen compassion, duty, and mercy." A powerful female voice echoed around her, the voice of the moon goddess. "Now choose truth. Who are you, Arya Silvercrest?" She looked at her reflection, the servant, the survivor, the warrior, the queen-in-waiting. She had to accept all of it. "I am the girl who hid in shadows, and the woman who now stands in the light," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I am my mother's daughter, and I am my own person. I am not perfect, but I am worthy, and I choose to lead not through fear, but through love." The mystical space shattered like glass. Arya found herself back in the center of the great arena, but she was changed. Her silver royal markings, once faint, now glowed with a soft internal luminescence. Her presence, once meek, now radiated a quiet but undeniable alpha power. She had survived. She had passed all the trials. The crowd erupted, not in fear, but in awe. The council, bound by their own laws, had no choice. They officially recognized her as the winner of the gauntlet and an alpha candidate for the Silvercrest territory. The celebration was cut short. A panicked messenger burst into the arena. The airborne plague, it's reached critical mass. We have dozens dead, hundreds more dying. The healers say we have less than 48 hours before it consumes us all. At that moment, Vivian made her final, desperate move. She stood before the council, her face a mask of solemn authority. "I have found a cure," she announced, her voice silencing the panicked crowd. She held up an ancient, fabricated scroll, a ritual, but it requires a great sacrifice to appease the goddess. We must purge the source of the corruption. We must sacrifice the false alpha whose mixed heritage has brought this curse upon us. She pointed a finger directly at Arya. Her existence triggered the plague. If we sacrifice her on the judgment stone, the plague will end. The desperate council, staring death in the face, actually considered it. "You're lying," Cain roared, "stepping in front of Arya?" Just then, Elena and Marcus arrived, flanked by loyal warriors. "She's the one who created the plague," Elena shouted, throwing Vivian's ritual book and lab notes onto the council table. "Here is the proof." Vivian didn't even try to deny it. She laughed. A chilling, unhinged sound. "I did what was necessary. Our bloodlines were weakening. I am saving our species by purging the weak." At her signal, more than 20 members of the council and the crowd tore off their robes, revealing the silver masks of the purest circle. They drew their weapons. Siding with Vivian, the arena was instantly divided. "Even if I created it, only I can control it," Vivian sneered. "Reject me, and you all die." She revealed a magical trigger tied to her life force. If she was killed or imprisoned, the plague would accelerate, killing everyone in hours. Arya stepped forward, her new authority settling on her like a mantle. "There is another way, the true cure from the prophecy." She explained about the moon well, the twin moon eclipse, and the ritual that required 2 pure bloodlines. Vivian's laugh was mocking. "The prophecy conveniently leaves out the price. You foolish girl, the ritual requires a sacrifice of life force. You know this. You saw what it did to your mother. The permanent cure will drain you both dry. It will kill you." She smirked. "You're just choosing a different form of suicide." Arya met her gaze without flinching. "If my life saves thousands, it's a fair trade." Cain stepped to her side, taking her hand. "Then I will stand with you. The ritual requires 2. We do it together." It was Marcus who delivered the final, devastating truth. "The ritual. It doesn't just kill you," he said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "Your mother's temporary fix drained her life. The permanent cure to reforge the balance requires the 2 pure blood mates to give everything, their bodies, their souls. You will both die." The arena was trapped in an impossible choice: a genocide led by Vivian, the death of thousands by plague, or a cure that would sacrifice their 2 greatest new hopes. Before anyone could decide, a young healer rushed in, his face pale with terror. "There's been a mutation. The plague. It's affecting pure bloodlines now, too." Vivian's face went white. "That's impossible. I designed it to—" "Your design was flawed," the healer cried. "In 24 hours, every single wolf on this continent will be infected. No one is immune." Vivian's ultimate plan had backfired, dooming them all, including herself and her followers. Arya and Cain locked eyes. The debate was over. They had less than 4 days to get to the Moonwell, or there would be no one left to save. The threat of universal extinction was a great motivator. Factions dissolved. Vivian, now a pariah but the only one who understood the plague's mechanics, was imprisoned and forced to share her research. Her notes confirmed their new, horrifying timeline. Mixed bloods had about 48 hours. Pure bloods, like Arya and Cain, had 72. It was a slim, desperate window. The journey to the Moonwell began immediately. It was a 3-day trek on foot through the hostile, unclaimed forbidden territories. Elena, a brilliant strategist, organized an escort. Marcus, despite his age, insisted on coming. I failed your mother. I will not fail you. Finn and Kara, now recovered thanks to Arya's blood, were among the first to volunteer. On the first night's march, Marcus revealed the full, heartbreaking truth of the prophecy's sacrifice. The ritual doesn't kill you in the traditional sense, he explained as they walked. It merges your souls with the moonwell itself. You become its immortal guardians, forever bound to the source of our magic. You'll save everyone, but you will lose your life, your pack, each other. You will no longer be truly alive. Arya and Cain walked in silence, processing the devastating news. They would save their world but be denied any place in it. A life together was the one thing they wanted, and it was the one thing they could never have. Deep in her cell, Vivian worked feverishly. Her ideology had crumbled to dust. The plague she had created to purify her people was now going to extinguish them. Her arrogance had doomed them all. Guilt, a foreign and agonizing emotion, gnawed at her. She began searching her own notes, not for control, but for a contingency, any other way to fix the catastrophe she had wrought. On the second day, they were ambushed. Rogues, driven mad by the plague's fever, attacked with mindless ferocity. Arya and Cain fought side by side, their mate bond an almost telepathic link. They moved as one entity, a whirlwind of silver and shadow, anticipating each other's moves, protecting each other's backs. They were magnificent, unstoppable, a living embodiment of the prophecy. But they weren't invincible. In the chaos, they lost 3 volunteers. Kara was one of them. The weight of their mission grew heavier with every step. That night, camped under the cold stars, Arya and Cain knew they had only 1 or 2 more nights together. The time for secrets and hesitation was over. Under the watchful eye of a sliver of moon, they completed their mate bond, claiming each other fully and completely. It was not a joining born of joy, but of a desperate, poignant love against the dying of the light. There was a raw, aching beauty in their union, a lifetime of passion and devotion packed into a few stolen hours. They touched with a reverence born of impending loss, whispering confessions and promises into the darkness. If I had 1,000 lifetimes, Cain murmured, his lips against her hair, I would choose you in every single one. Then let's live a lifetime in the days we have left, Arya whispered back, her tears mingling with his. As they slept, entwined, their minds joined in a shared dream, a gift of Cain's Nightwalker blood, now shared through their bond omniscient. They saw themselves at the moonwell, performing the ritual, but the vision was strange. There was a third, shadowy figure standing with them, their hand joined with theirs. They awoke with a start, the meaning of the vision lost to them, just as Marcus shook them awake. We have a problem. Elena had collapsed. Her breathing was shallow, her skin clammy. The plague had reached their group. They were still a full day's march from the moonwell. Finn, who had hunted in these lands as a rogue, pointed to a sheer cliff face. There's a shortcut. Through the Gorgon's Pass. It's dangerous, but it will save us 18 hours. We take the shortcut, Cain decided instantly. I'll carry Elena. The climb was a nightmare. Cain ascended the treacherous cliff with Elena, now delirious with fever, strapped to his back, plague-infected hawks, their minds twisted by the disease. Dive-bombed them from above. They fought while clinging to the sheer rock face. A rope snapped, and Finn nearly fell to his death before Arya caught him, her own strength failing. Then, Marcus slipped. He managed to catch himself on a lower ledge, but the sharp crack of bone told them his leg was broken. He couldn't go on. Leave me, he grunted, his face pale with pain. Go, finish this. We don't leave Pack behind, Arya yelled back, starting to climb down to him. "I'm not your pack anymore," Marcus shouted, his voice echoing in the gorge. "I'm already dead." He pulled back his sleeve, revealing the dark, spidery veins of the plague spreading up his arm. "I was infected 2 days ago. I've been hiding it, leaving a trail of my own blood to draw the infected away from your path. It was the last thing I could do for your mother." He looked up at her, his eyes full of a father's love. "Finish what she started. That's all I ask." Before they could react, he cut his own rope. He fell into the chasm below, taking 3 of the infected hawks with him in his final, defiant act. Arya screamed his name, a raw, ragged sound of loss. Cain had to physically hold her back, pulling her up to the top of the pass. As the sun set, they reached the edge of the forbidden territories. Below them, in a crater of ancient, blasted rock, lay the moonwell. It pulsed with a soft, ethereal light, a pool of liquid moonlight. But between them and their goal was an army. Hundreds, maybe thousands of infected wolves, drawn instinctively to the source of their power, milled around the crater's edge. Elena, barely conscious, whispered, "There's no way around them. You'll have to fight through." Cain looked at the horde, then at Arya, her face streaked with tears and dirt, her eyes burning with resolve. "We will." Arya looked at him, their hands finding each other. They had lost so much. For everyone. For Marcus. For Kara. They would end this. Above them, the first of the twin moons began to rise. The eclipse would begin in 20 hours. Dawn painted the sky in shades of blood and bruises. The infected horde was a roiling sea of fevered desperation. It was the 4 of them, Arya, Cain, a fading Elena, and a terrified but resolute Finn against an army. "We can't fight them all," Cain growled, scanning the horde for a weakness. "We don't have to," Arya said, an idea taking shape. She pulled out the Moonwell stone from her trial. It still pulsed with a faint light. The infected are drawn to strong life force, to pure magic. What if I give them a beacon to follow? The plan was suicidal. Arya would make a direct run for the Moonwell, drawing the entire horde after her. Cain, Elena, and Finn would run interference, creating a perimeter to buy her the precious seconds she would need. "No," Cain said instantly. "Absolutely not." "It's the only way," she insisted, her silver eyes locking with his. "Trust me." She didn't wait for his approval. She took a deep breath, channeled a flicker of her own life force into the stone, and ran. The stone blazed to life like a miniature sun. The entire horde turned as one, 1,000 pairs of fevered eyes fixing on her. A low, collective groan rose from them, and they gave chase. Arya ran faster than she ever had in her life, her body a blur of motion. She leaped over fissures, dodged snapping jaws. Her world narrowed to the sound of her own heartbeat and the pulsing glow of the well ahead. Cain, Elena, and Finn were phantoms at the edge of her vision, taking down the fastest of the infected, creating the briefest of openings for her to exploit. She reached the edge of the crater, half sliding, half falling down the rocky incline to the shore of the Moonwell. The water was like liquid starlight, humming with a power that vibrated in her bones. The moment her feet touched the sacred ground, the knowledge of the ritual flooded her mind. Cain was at her side a second later, his breathing ragged. "Arya, what do we do?" The horde was pouring into the crater behind them. "We join hands," she gasped. "Enter the well and speak the words." "But Cain, the sacrifice." "I know," he said, his hand closing around hers, firm and sure, no regrets. Finn and Elena, fighting back to back, formed a desperate last stand at the edge of the crater, holding back the tide of bodies, even weakened by the plague. Elena fought like a Valkyrie, her fading alpha power a brilliant, defiant flare. Arya and Cain stepped into the Moonwell. The water was both freezing cold and searingly hot, an agony and an ecstasy. they began the ancient incantation, the forgotten words flowing from them as if they'd known them their whole lives. The water around them began to glow, silver and shadow intertwining. Suddenly, a figure stumbled out of the horde, clawing her way toward them. It was Vivian. She had escaped, deliberately infected herself, and followed them. Her face was a mask of fevered desperation. "Stop, you fools!" she shrieked, her voice hoarse. "You don't understand what you're truly doing." She collapsed at the water's edge, holding up a shaking hand. The ritual, it doesn't just bind you to the well, it resets the bloodlines completely. Her frantic research had uncovered the prophecy's terrible, hidden meaning. When the ritual is complete, the curse will be broken, but everyone with mixed blood will be cleansed. Their connection to their wolves will be severed. Only the 5 pure bloodlines will remain shifters. You'll save their lives, but you will strip 80% of our people of their very identity. Arya and Cain froze, their incantation faltering. They stared at each other in horror. Was this the goddess's cruel price? Save everyone from death, only to destroy who they were. They were trapped. Continue, and commit cultural genocide. Stop, and everyone dies within hours. Arya's mind raced, seizing on the one piece that didn't fit. Her dream, the vision of the 3 figures. "Vivian," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "You're a pure bloodline, aren't you? That's why your plague design was so specific. You're from the Moon Shadow line, the one everyone thought was extinct." Vivian, shocked, gave a slight nod. "The prophecy says 2 must stand as 1, Arya reasoned, piecing it together. "But our dream showed 3. What if we've been reading it wrong? What if the cure isn't purification, but reunification? What if it takes 3 pure bloodlines, 1 for each face of the moon, to reforge the balance without erasing anyone?" Vivian stared at her, then at the well, then at the dying wolves around her. Everything she had ever believed, everything she had killed for, was wrong. She saw the faces of her family, dying from a plague long ago. She had become the very thing she hated. "I spent my life trying to save us by dividing us," she whispered, tears cutting paths through the grime on her face. Maybe I was wrong." With the last of her strength, she staggered into the moonwell, reaching out her hands to them. "If this kills me, at least I die trying to fix what I broke." Arya and Cain each took one of her hands. The moment the circle of 3 was complete, the moonwell exploded with light, silver for Silvercrest, shadow for Nightwalker, and a deep ethereal violet for Moonshadow. They spoke the incantation together, their voices as one. The magic didn't just drain them, it remade them. A shockwave of pure energy erupted from the well, washing over the entire continent. The plague wasn't just cured, it was burned away, leaving bodies and souls clean. The mixed bloodlines didn't weaken, they were reforged, their diverse heritage becoming a source of new, multifaceted strength. The curse had become a blessing. In the well, the 3 of them were being consumed by the light. The ritual still demanded a price. Vivian was the first to fade. "Tell them, I'm sorry," she whispered, and then dissolved into motes of violet light, her soul at peace. Arya and Cain felt themselves being pulled apart, their essences ready to merge with the well for eternity. "I love you," they said at the same time, their voices echoing in each other's minds. "In every life," Cain promised, "I will find you." "In every life," Arya vowed, "I will be waiting." Just as their forms began to dissolve, a presence filled their minds, warm and powerful and ancient, the moon goddess. "You misunderstand the sacrifice, my children." She spoke. "The sacrifice was never your lives. It was your willingness to give everything. You have passed the final test." The consuming light reversed its flow, pouring back into them, healing them, making them whole. Arya and Cain awoke on the shore of the Moonwell. Gasping for air, they were alive. The sun was rising on the completed eclipse. Finn and Elena, fully healed, were rushing toward them. Tears of relief streaming down their faces. All around the crater, the formerly infected wolves were waking up, confused but cured. And in the distance, a new sound began to build, the sound of every pack on the continent, howling in joyous celebration. Arya fell into Cain's arms, weak with exhaustion and relief. "We did it," she whispered. "We did," he confirmed, holding her tight. They looked at the Moonwell. The water was clear and calm, but deep within its sparkling depths, a single, violet light pulsed gently, at peace. "What happens now?" Arya asked, looking out at the dawn of a new world. Cain smiled, a true, unguarded smile that transformed his face. "Now," he said, pressing a kiss to her forehead, "we live together." 2 weeks later, the world was still reeling. The Great Cure, as it was now called, had shattered the old order. The purest circle had collapsed overnight. The revelation that mixed-blood wolves were now stronger, their varied heritages a blessing instead of a curse, had turned centuries of dogma on its head. In a grand ceremony attended by envoys from every major pack, Arya was formally crowned Alpha of the restored Silvercrest pack. She stood before them, not in a servant's tunic, but in ceremonial silver armor, the Moonwell stone now set in a pendant around her neck. Cain stood beside her, a silent, unshakable pillar of support. He was not her superior, not her conqueror. He was her partner. "The old ways nearly destroyed us." Arya's voice rang out, clear and strong, fear of change, hatred of those who were different. It rotted our society from within. No more. From this day forward, Silvercrest will be a pack that values merit over birthright, compassion over cruelty, and unity over division. Then, Cain made his own shocking announcement. He was formally dissolving the centuries-old system of forced alliances and political matings. "Shadow Ridge will stand with Silvercrest as equals," he declared, "and we invite any who wish to join us in a new federation of free packs, a council of equals, not a hierarchy of the strong dominating the weak." The older, more traditional alphas bristled, but the younger generation roared its approval. Elena Rivers, now a hero in her own right, was offered the position of first counselor of this new federation. She accepted immediately, her sharp mind perfectly suited to the political maneuvering that lay ahead. But not everyone celebrated. A faction of hard-line traditionalists, led by the stern and powerful Lord Ravenscroft, saw this new federation as a dangerous perversion of their sacred traditions. They watched, and they waited for Arya's New World idealism to fail. They didn't have to wait long. A remote pack on the northern border, too small to have a voice on the old council, was attacked by a band of rogues emboldened by the recent chaos. They sent a desperate plea for aid. "It's a trap," Arya's new advisors warned. "Ravenscroft is testing you. It's too dangerous for you to go." "Then I will go," Cain said immediately. "No," Arya countered, placing a hand on his arm. "We go. That's what partners do." They led a combined strike force of Silvercrest and Shadow Ridge warriors. The situation was exactly as predicted, a very real rogue threat, with Ravenscroft's forces watching from the hills, waiting to see how the Omega Queen would handle a real battle. Arya didn't just handle it, she excelled. She used her knowledge of the common wolf to anticipate the rogues' movements and her alpha-level strategy to outmaneuver them. She fought with a ferocity that stunned the onlookers, but tempered it with a compassion that saved as many lives as possible. By the end, the rogues were captured, the small pack was saved, and even Lord Ravenscroft was forced to give a grudging nod of respect. Amid the chaos of building a new world, Arya and Cain stole quiet moments for themselves. They were designing their shared den, a beautiful fortress built on the border between their two territories, a symbol of their unity. It was in one of these quiet moments, curled up by a fire, that Arya told him, "I'm pregnant." The word struck Cain with the force of a physical blow. He stared at her, then at her still flat stomach, his mind a whirlwind of terror and overwhelming joy, the first child born to a fully bonded, pure-blood pair in centuries, a child of prophecy. "Are you ready for this?" she asked, her hand covering his on her belly. He pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her silver hair. "With you," he whispered, "I'm ready for anything." Their fragile peace was interrupted by the arrival of a strange wolf, a messenger from the far, frozen north. He spoke of wolves who had separated from the packs during the Great Schism, living in isolation for 200 years, descendants of the fifth, lost bloodline. "They have heard of the Great Cure," the messenger said. "They have heard of the Silver Moon Queen and her shadow Alpha. They are coming." He did not say if they were coming as friends or as conquerors. That evening, Arya stood on a balcony overlooking their valley. Below, wolves from a dozen different packs trained together, their old rivalries forgotten. Cain came up behind her, wrapping his strong arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Do you think we can really make this work?" she asked softly. "I think we already are," he murmured, his gaze sweeping over the scene below. "My mother would be so proud," she whispered. "She is," Cain replied. "I'm sure of it." He lifted his head and howled, a long, clear note of happiness and love. Arya joined him, their voices twining together. Below them, their united packs answered, a great chorus that shook the very mountains. It was a new song for a new world. And in the far distance, a storm was gathering. 3 months passed. The Federation of Free Packs was not just surviving, it was thriving. Peace had settled over the lands, a golden age of cooperation and prosperity. Arya, now 5 months pregnant, was radiant. She and Cain ruled as one, their partnership a model for the new era. Then the delegation from the frozen wastes arrived. They were led by Alpha Thorn Frostborn, a massive white wolf whose eyes were the color of glacial ice. They were the Ice Warden Pack, descendants of the fifth pure bloodline, and they had kept to the old, brutal ways of strength above all. Thorn was not impressed by the Federation. "Equality, compassion," he scoffed. "You speak of weakness. You have broken every law that kept our kind strong." He was not hostile, merely disdainful. He proposed a test, a ritual combat, champion against champion, to prove the Federation's worth, with Arya pregnant. Cain stepped forward. The fight between Cain and Thorn was legendary. It was Cain's speed and tactical brilliance against Thorn's raw power and centuries of experience. They fought for hours under the watching eyes of both their people, until they both collapsed from sheer exhaustion. A draw. Thorn, panting, gave Cain a look of newfound respect. "You fight with the heart of the ancients. Perhaps there is merit to your way." He agreed his pack would stay and observe for a season, but later, he sought out Arya in private. "I sense a darkness coming," the old wolf warned, his icy eyes troubled. "The ritual you performed, it broke the curse." "Yes, but the curse was also a prison. By breaking it, you have set something else free, something ancient and terrible." His words proved prophetic. Within a week, strange things began to happen. Wolves would lose control of their shifts, becoming feral for brief. Terrifying moments, a creeping madness, like a shadow, began to move through the territories. Arya was plagued by a recurring nightmare. She saw the moonwell, but its waters were no longer clear and shining. They were black and stagnant. A twisted figure, neither wolf nor man, rose from its corrupted depths. "You broke my chains," the creature hissed in her mind. "The moon goddess imprisoned me for my ambition. Now I am free, and I will have my revenge on her chosen children." It lunged for her, and she woke up screaming. She and Elena scoured the most ancient texts. Searching for an answer, they found it in a single, crumbling fragment of a scroll. It spoke of Malachar the Forsaken, a primordial wolf who had been there at the dawn of their species. He had defied the moon goddess, seeking to enslave humanity and rule as a dark god. She had defeated him and used his own evil essence to power the curse, binding him within the moonwell. When they had broken the curse, they had unknowingly unlocked his cage. An elderly scholar named Aldrich Greywind, who had heard of Arya's search, arrived with more terrifying news. Malachar is the antithesis of all the goddess created, he explained, his old hands trembling. He can corrupt werewolves, twisting them into mindless servants of his will. The goddess defeated him once with the combined power of all 5 pure bloodlines. He will be hunting for you, Luna Queen, and especially for your child. The horror of it dawned on her. Her unborn baby, a convergence of Silvercrest and Nightwalker blood, now touched by the essence of Moonshadow through Vivian's sacrifice, was a unique and potent threat to Malachar. It was also his primary target. That night, he attacked. A storm of shadow and malice descended on their fortress. Malachar manifested as a colossal, corrupted wolf made of smoke and rage. He tore through their defenses as if they were cobwebs. Cain met him head-on, fighting with a desperation Arya had never seen, but he was outmatched. Malachar was a primordial force. The shadow beast slammed Cain against a wall and advanced on Arya's chambers. "Your child is the key to my final destruction," Malachar's voice echoed in her mind. "I will not allow it to be born." "You'll have to go through me," Arya snarled, standing defiantly in his path, a small knife in her hand. "Gladly," the creature replied. It lunged, but just as its claws reached for her, a raw, protective power exploded from within her. It wasn't her power, it was her baby's. A wave of pure, untainted moonlight slammed into Malachar, burning him, driving him back. He recoiled, surprised and pained. "You are stronger than I anticipated," he hissed, his form dissolving. "No matter. I will gather my full strength and return. Next time, nothing will stop me." And he was gone. Cain was alive, but gravely wounded. The fortress was in ruins, and the entire Federation was terrified. Arya knew what she had to do. She had 4 months until her child was born. 4 months to find a way to kill a god. That night, she prayed to the moon goddess for guidance. A vision came to her, a map to a place lost to memory, the Temple of First Howling, the sacred place where their kind had been born. "Go to the beginning," a voice whispered. "Find my tears. They are your salvation." Arya awoke with grim purpose. Her final journey had begun. Against all advice, Arya, now 8 months pregnant, set out for the Temple of First Howling. Cain, barely recovered, refused to let her go alone. Elena, Thorn, and a hand-picked team of champions from each of the now allied bloodlines went with them. The journey through the sacred mountains was a grueling 3-week trek. Malachar's influence had spread. They were constantly harried by corrupted wolves, former pack members, their minds twisted into serving the Forsaken One. Each fight was a heartbreak, and Arya insisted they subdue and bind their former brethren rather than kill them. One night, Cain admitted his deepest fear. "I can't lose you. Arya, not you, not the baby. I can't do this without you." "You won't have to," she promised, taking his hand. "We're going to win. We have to." Thorn, the old Ice Warden Alpha, revealed his pack's sacred trust when the goddess defeated Malachar the first time. She wept for his betrayal. Her tears crystallized into 3 stones of pure divine power, the moon shards. One is hidden in the temple, one was thought destroyed, and the third, he opened a leather pouch and produced a crystal that pulsed with soft, white light. "We have guarded for centuries. You will need all 3 to forge a weapon that can kill a primordial." They finally reached the temple, a place of breathtaking. ancient beauty, deep inside. They found the second moon shard, but as they tried to take it, the scholar Aldrich stopped them. "The third stone was not destroyed," he said, his voice heavy. He unbuttoned his tunic, revealing a glowing mark over his heart. It was bonded to a living vessel. My bloodline, the Star Keepers, has guarded it for 500 years. To claim it, I must give it willingly. Before they could protest, he began a ritual, his life force flowing from him into the two stones in Arya's hand. He aged a century in a minute, crumbling to dust with a peaceful smile on his face. "Protect the future," were his last words. With all three moon shards, Arya began the forging. She had to channel their immense power through herself and her unborn child. The pain was excruciating, threatening to tear her apart. Cain, Thorn, and the others linked hands, forming a circle around her, pouring their own strength into her through their pack bonds. Light exploded in the chamber. When it faded, a blade of solid moonlight lay at her feet, the moon shard blade. At that moment, the ground trembled. Malachar had found them. An army of thousands of corrupted wolves surrounded the temple. "You have your weapon," his voice boomed, "but you are weak, vulnerable, about to give birth. You cannot hope to defeat me." "I don't have to," Arya gasped, leaning on Cain for support. "We all will." The final battle began. The champions fought a desperate, impossible defense at the temple gates. As the battle raged, the worst possible thing happened. Triggered by the stress and the surge of power, Arya went into labor. Cain was torn between his mate and the battle, but she pushed him away. "Go protect us." Malachar himself joined the fray, a being of pure shadow and fury. He carved through their lines, heading straight for Arya. Cain met him, fighting with the strength of a god, but he was no match for the primordial. Malachar broke him, casting him aside, and advanced on the circle of female wolves now shielding a screaming Arya. He was just feet away when a new cry filled the air, a baby's cry. Arya had given birth to a daughter. The moment the baby took her first breath, an explosion of pure, divine moonlight erupted from her tiny body. The light blasted outwards, and every single corrupted wolf on the battlefield collapsed. The shadow magic burned clean from their souls. Malachar recoiled, shielding his eyes. Impossible, so much power. Arya, holding her newborn daughter, felt strength flood back into her. Her wounds healed. The moon shard blade flew into her hand. She stood, no longer just an alpha, but a radiant, avenging goddess. "You wanted to face me," she said, her voice echoing with primordial power. "Here I am." They clashed, light against shadow. Arya fought with a skill that was not her own, her movements guided by the moon goddess herself. "The goddess gave us chains," Malachar roared. "Mates, packs, duty, I sought freedom." "You sought to dominate," Arya retorted, her blade meeting his claws of shadow. "Those aren't chains, they are connections. They are what make us strong. You are alone, Malachar, and that's why you lose." She raised her blade high. "Lend me your strength," she cried out to all who could hear. Every wolf the champions, the newly freed, the packs miles away howled as one. Their power, their love, their hope flowed into Arya, channeled through her into the blade until it blazed like a newborn star. She drove the blade deep into Malachar's shadowy heart. His form disintegrated, unraveling into nothing. His last words were a faint, bitter whisper. "You think you've won, but the goddess will demand her price." Then he was gone. Arya collapsed, clutching her child, and found Cain. He was broken but alive. "We won," she sobbed. "You won," he corrected, smiling through the blood. "We," she insisted, "always we." They named the baby Selene. Her very presence was a healing balm. Cain's bones knitted, his wounds closed. The child was a miracle. 1 month later, the Federation was stronger than ever. The legend of the battle at the temple had united all the packs. Arya and Cain ruled their territories from a shared home, their co-leadership, the new model for all. At a grand council, Arya addressed the united alphas. 6 months ago, I was a servant. Today, I am an alpha. Not because of my blood, but because we were all willing to fight for something better. We are all the architects of our own world. That night, she stood on their balcony with Cain, watching over their peaceful valley. Their daughter, Celine, slept in a bassinet between them. "Do you think this peace will last?" Arya asked. "What we've built will endure," Cain said, pulling her close. "You took a world of chains and taught it how to be free." Celine stirred in her sleep. Her eyes opened. They were pure silver, like her mother's. She made a sound, and a single word bloomed in the minds of her parents, clear as a silver bell. Hope. Arya smiled, tears in her eyes, and lifted her daughter to the sky. "Yes, little moon, hope. That's what we fought for. That's what we'll protect." Cain wrapped his arms around them both. A father, a mate, an alpha. Finally at peace. Together. Arya leaned against him, her heart full, always together. Their howls joined, a song of love and victory, answered by 1,000 voices across the land. The moon shone down, bright and approving. In the new world they had built, anything was possible. Their story was over, but their lives were just beginning.